Welcome back. I'm Matt, the questioning accountant, and I think we need to talk about freedom of speech and freedom of expression. These two concepts are practically the same, but freedom of expression includes many forms of expression and not just speech, such as written words, drawings, and protests. In the United States, the First Amendment of the Constitution guarantees that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. However, the courts have ruled in favor of freedom of expression and consider most forms of expression as protected by the First Amendment, with certain exceptions like hate speech, defamation, and plagiarism. This doesn't mean you can say whatever you want, and when you do there will be no consequences, however. The First Amendment doesn't allow the federal government to use force to stop you, but just because Congress can't make a law about it doesn't mean I can do whatever I want about it. I still have to obey the laws. It stops being a First Amendment issue, but if I use violence, then it becomes a violence issue, and if I'm the aggressor, then I become the problem. I found an article from TechCrunch titled, "Unless Online Giants Fight the Abuse of Free Speech, Democracy and Innovation is Threatened." The article says, when thousands, perhaps millions of people use social networks to spread hate speech, online harassment, and abuse, the problem might often seem insurmountable. But whatever approaches are being used to address the problem, something somewhere is clearly not working. YouTube videos by extremists and terrorists abound. Targeted harassment and trolling on Twitter remain to this day, years and years after you might reasonably have thought they might get it right. Well, I wouldn't have expected that at all. After all, if the presence of online trolls doesn't stop people from using Twitter, then why should Twitter do anything about it? Harassment might be a different story, but if it's truly harassment, then it becomes a legal matter. And how do you stop someone from breaking the rules for the first time? If you ban everyone who breaks the rules, there will still be those who eventually break the rules in the future. And since there will be new people joining the site over time, the issue will never go away unless you ban everyone. If there isn't anyone using Twitter, then no one can be harassed on Twitter. The article goes on to say, working out what exactly is hate speech and what might be, for instance, simple democratic opposition to a different point of view is a complex issue. As the phrase goes, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, the first part's right. How do we decide what is actually hate speech and what is just a difference of opinion? After all, there are probably people that think saying Black Lives Matter would qualify as hate speech, and there are probably people that think saying all lives matter is hate speech. As for the second part, however, I think the difference is usually fairly clear. If you're blowing things up, or breaking property, or bringing harm to innocent people, then you're not a freedom fighter, you're a criminal. There may be some exceptions, such as slave uprisings or rebellions against tyranny, where people are fighting for freedom, and as a result, innocent people end up as casualties in the conflict. Violence against violence is one thing, but violence against words is another. If you're fighting the oppression caused by online trolls or a president you don't like, then you're not advancing the cause of freedom, you are instead interfering with civilized society. The article concludes with, what is at stake here? The freedom and rights enjoyed by companies that organically developed in democratic countries could well end up being eroded. How many global, truly innovative tech companies, not including clones, have come out of Putin's Russia or Erdogan's Turkey? Tech innovation depends on free, democratic societies. The Enlightenment of the 19th century was only possible when freedom of thought was able to flourish. It did not emerge from the fog of the Dark Ages, where conspiracy and superstition abound, not unlike the fake news era of today. To not put in place a mechanism where abuse and untruths smother science and factual reporting is to put at stake any progression in innovation and entrepreneurship. It is surely in the interest of the giant online and social platforms to pay attention to the erosion of trust in genuine media sources and professional journalism. Without it, the rights and freedoms they enjoy under democracy, and from whose breast they themselves were succored, will likely disappear, and populist politicians will take advantage of the misinformation and inflamed political discourse to the detriment of a free society. This seems true enough, but the media has already done a fine enough job of discrediting itself. The old media has created a ton of attacks on YouTube and some of its most popular creators. Attacks like this give individuals a chance to see the media caught in their own lies, because if you watch something all the time, and somebody comes out and makes a claim about it, and you know it to be false, then you get to see how that lie started, and you get to see how that lie spreads. And with this, we have to ask ourselves, if it's happening sometimes, is it happening all of the time? So the further the old media spreads their lies, the more people will be affected, and the more we'll see why they should not be trusted. But we shouldn't be blindly following the media anyway, so overall this can be a good thing if it opens people up to being more skeptical of the claims they hear. It's much simpler to rely on the news to get all of our information, but if they're lying to us, then we shouldn't be trusting what they say to begin with. So if they're upholding the truth, then we'd have a reason to fear the distrust of the media, but if they're constantly cherry-picking and telling half-truths, then the distrust by the people is not misplaced, and ultimately this means we all have to become the new champions of truth. This may sound like a lot of work, but it's necessary for a free democracy, even with a fully functioning free press. This is because the media is a business, and as such, it is all about making money. So if the majority of people want to see death and destruction, then the media will do what they can to deliver. But if truth and accuracy is what the people want, then the media will be happy to oblige. But this means not just letting people speak, but hearing them out and challenging their ideas, and having our ideas challenged as well. And yes, this means letting people say bad things sometimes. But we can beat bad ideas with better ideas. So what are we so afraid of? People can change their mind. When we don't let a debate happen, we stop them from being able to see the light of reason. We become the problem because we become the force stopping change from happening. Maybe because we fear those ideas will win, but if we have better ideas, they won't win. Sometimes even the most extreme views can be changed. Even neo-Nazis and jihadists can, on occasion, be brought back to reality. I'll leave links in the description to 2 such examples. These examples are of course extremely rare occasions, and are very unlikely to occur when dealing with ideologues. But even if I can't change the mind of the person who I'm debating with, there is always the chance of changing the mind of those watching, which could mean having the ability to turn the speaker's audience against them by showing how crappy their ideas are. Unless they don't have crappy ideas, but if their ideas are not crappy, then why would you think they're wrong? If they're wrong, then we can show exactly how and why they are wrong. This doesn't work for entertainment or comedy because those things often are not meant to be taken seriously. So if comedians tell offensive jokes, it makes no sense to debate with the comedian because there's a good chance the comedian doesn't actually believe what they say. Take PewDiePie, for example. Calling him a Nazi or anti-Semite makes no sense because of the context of his jokes. You've probably heard about this by now, but basically he used a website where he paid some people to make a short video with an anti-Semitic joke. But the joke makes no sense if PewDiePie was actually a Nazi. There wouldn't be any humor in it at all. So at most you could accuse him of letting the joke go too far, but for every joke, there'll always be someone who finds it offensive. So unless the joke actually incites violence or spreads hate of an individual, then we should just consider it what it is, a joke. Whether you think it's funny or not is really all that matters. If you like it, then watch it. And if you don't like it, or you don't think it's funny, or you think it's offensive, then don't watch it, and don't support the person. But don't attack others just because they don't get their feelings hurt as easily. People may object by saying, if this is true, why are there still bad ideas? Well, 2 reasons. First off, bad ideas will never go away. If you suppress bad ideas, someone will eventually think of that idea again. But since the idea was suppressed, no one will know how to properly object to the idea without rethinking it all over, which possibly means years of developing arguments based on logic and studying history. Which might mean, since no one knows how to beat the bad ideas, that the bad ideas end up winning. If, however, we stay constantly vigilant, we can spread better ideas to others who will then know exactly why those bad ideas are bad, and then they won't be fooled by these ideas. They may still end up deciding to believe it anyway for whatever reason, but they won't get fooled into believing something. The second reason is that these debates have not really been happening. I've had several people tell me that the time for the debate is over. We've had years of arguing and nothing has changed. But stop and honestly ask yourself if that's really true. Have we really had debates? Have we really been discussing these ideas? I think it's pretty clear that the answer is no. The 2016 US presidential debates had almost no discussion of actual issues that the voters cared about. Not to mention the outrage and protests of people like Milo Yiannopoulos. There was very little interest in debating him, but there were plenty of people who wanted to shut him down and stop him from speaking. And by shutting down his speech, his fans don't have the opportunity to see how his ideas hold up against other values. And as you probably know, Milo was deplatformed. And not by protesters destroying ATMs or smashing windows, but by his own words. He was given a chance to share his views, and his audience rejected those views. And had he just spread his views unquestioned, he may have been able to rationalize what he said to his audience. But because he spread those ideas to others who were not afraid to call him out on his bullshit, his audience was able to see how his ideas don't hold up in the light of scrutiny. Because at the end of the day, if you are already not a fan of someone and their ideas, it doesn't matter how much you dislike those ideas. What matters is how attractive those ideas are to the ones that agree with them. In other words, if you hate Milo or PewDiePie or JonTron, it doesn't make any difference if millions of other people love them. And I'm not trying to make an argument here that these 3 guys are the same in any way, or that they have the same ideas, or that their ideas are equally bad. All I'm trying to point out is that All three of them have recently been labeled as controversial. And shutting them up won't do any good, because they'll just be able to go speak somewhere else, and in time their audiences will find them again. If, however, their ideas are actually bad, and you can show people why they should not love their ideas, then you may be able to actually take their audience away. Not by silencing them or refusing to let them speak, and not with force or even malice, but with nothing but better ideas.